Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to explore how to be better, more impactful leaders, and it all comes down to transforming the way we speak.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we'll be drawing insights from Judith Humphrey's book, Speaking as a Leader. Have you had a chance to look at it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a really interesting read. The premise itself is captivating, isn't it? The idea that so many individuals, even those with incredible ideas, fail to communicate in a way that actually inspires others.
Right. So it's not enough to just have good ideas.
Not at all. It's about how you convey those ideas, how you make people believe in them and want to follow you.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we unlock that potential to be truly inspiring leaders?
Well, Humphrey offers a roadmap through her four-step leadership model, which is essentially a framework for turning ordinary communication into, well, powerful leadership.
Okay, so what are those 4 steps?
The four steps are think like a leader, script yourself as a leader, use the language of leadership, and achieve a leader's presence.
Lots to unpack there. So let's start with that first step, think like a leader. I'm curious, what does thinking like a leader even mean in the context of communication?
Right. Well, this step is all about challenging some common misconceptions we have about what truly makes communication effective. For instance, many people think that if you just bombard your audience with data, show them how much, it'll automatically establish your expertise.
Right, like just drowning them in information. I've definitely sat through those presentations where it's just slide after slide of data. And to be honest, you just come out feeling more confused than when you started.
Exactly. It can be completely overwhelming and unproductive. It's like Humphrey says, data without a clear message, without a purpose is pretty much useless. It's like she uses this really relatable anecdote about a CFO who's just drowning in spreadsheets. He's overwhelmed with information, just begging his team to talk to him instead of burying him in numbers.
Makes sense. Everyone's craving coherence, not just piles of information.
Right. We need to understand the why behind the data, the story it's telling. That's how you connect with people.
Speaking of stories, I remember Humphrey talks about Serge, the engineer who completely revamped his presentation, right?
Oh, yes. Serge had this incredible new engine design, but his initial presentation was just a technical data dump. Nobody understood what he was trying to say, let alone get excited about it.
And then what happened?
He took Humphrey's advice and reframed his presentation, focusing on the why, the benefits, the vision behind his design. He turned it into a story, an inspiring pitch.
And the results were pretty incredible, weren't they?
Absolutely. He not only secured funding for his project, but he also boosted his career and his credibility skyrocketed. It just goes to show thinking like a leader, moving beyond just the technical details, that's what makes a difference.
So inspiring action, not just presenting information.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? This principle doesn't just apply to big presentations or formal settings. It applies to everyday interactions as
Oh,
well.
really?
Yeah, Humphrey talks about Tom Marinelli, this senior executive who sees every conversation, even a quick chat in the elevator, as an opportunity to lead, to inspire. It's about being present, being always on, ready to engage and motivate people.
So it's like a constant mindset, not just something you switch on and off for a presentation.
Exactly. Always thinking about how you can connect with people, inspire them, even in the most mundane situations.
So think like a leader is about the mindset, the approach to communication. But how do we actually put that into practice?
Well, that's where the second step comes in. Script yourself as a leader.
So we're talking about actually writing a script for every interaction, like actors memorizing lines.
Not exactly. It's more about strategically structuring your thoughts, organizing your message for clarity and impact. Humphrey introduces this thing called the leader's script, which is essentially a framework for making your speaking more powerful, more impactful.
Okay, so less about memorization and more about having a clear structure.
Precisely. It includes things like having a strong grabber to capture people's attention right off the bat.
Oh, I remember Humphrey talked about that. She shared that great anecdote about David Galloway, the publishing executive.
Ah, yes. He was giving a talk and started with a question about romance novels. Got complete silence from the audience.
And then he said something like, well, you should. Our readers have better sex lives.
Something like that, yeah. Bold move, for sure, but definitely memorable. And hey, it got people's attention.
It certainly did. So a good grabber is important, but what else goes into this leader script?
Well, once you have their attention, you need to move smoothly to your subject, what you're actually talking about. But just as importantly, you need a clear, concise message.
So not just wandering around rambling through a bunch of different topics.
Not at all. You need a focal point, a key takeaway that you want people to walk away with.
Because without that clear message, even if you're a brilliant speaker, it's easy to lose people.
Absolutely. It's like Humphrey says, speaking without a focused message just creates confusion. She even mentions how Barack Obama, early on in his presidential campaign, struggled with this, trying to pack too many ideas into a limited time.
So even someone as eloquent as Obama needs to refine their message for maximum impact. Makes you realize how important this is for everyone.
For sure. It reminds me of that Mark Twain quote. He said he never wrote Metropolis because he could get the same money for City.
Less is more, right?
Exactly. Choose your words carefully, make them count.
Okay, so we've got think like a leader, which is about the mindset, and script yourself as a leader, which is about the structure. But what about the actual words we use?
Ah, that brings us to step 3. Use the language of leadership. This one's all about making sure your language itself reflects leadership.
That makes sense. I've definitely been in situations where someone's using all this jargon and I have no idea what they're talking about. It can be really alienating.
Right, it's like they're speaking a completely different language, and that's the problem with jargon. It creates a barrier between you and your audience.
It's like you're putting all the burden on them to decode what you're saying.
Exactly. Humphrey actually breaks down the different types of jargon. Abstract words, vague and unclear. Buzzwords, which are just trendy but often meaningless. Acronyms, those alphabet soups that nobody outside your field understands. And of course, just overly complex terminology. Big words when simple ones would do.
It's almost like speaking in code.
It is, and it defeats the purpose of communication, which is to connect with people.
So how do we combat this? How do we make sure we're using the language of leadership?
Well, for starters, get rid of the jargon. Embrace clear, straightforward language that everyone can understand. Humphrey even tells this funny story about a Missouri farmer who only started winning elections after he lost part of his tongue and had to simplify his language.
That's an interesting path to political success.
It is, but it underscores the point that sometimes simpler is better. Straightforward language can actually enhance your authenticity, which is crucial for any leader.
It makes sense. People are more likely to trust someone who speaks in a genuine, relatable way.
Exactly. It's about stripping away the pretense, connecting on a human level. Humphrey also stresses the importance of personalizing your language, using words like I, you, and we.
Oh, I see. It creates that sense of shared purpose, brings people in.
Exactly. It's about creating a connection, showing that you're in it together.
I remember Humphrey talks about Lou Gerstner's experience when he joined IBM. He was bombarded with advice from everyone.
Oh yeah, all these awe-powered people.
And in the end, a Nobel laureate gave him the most straightforward advice. Don't screw it up, Lou.
Straight to the point.
It is. But it just shows how powerful, simple, personal language can be, even in a high-stakes corporate environment.
Absolutely. It's about being human, connecting on a human level.
Okay, so we've covered the mindset, the structure, the language. What's the final piece of this puzzle?
That brings us to the 4th step, achieve a leader's presence.
What does that even mean? Is it about some kind of charisma you either have or you don't?
Not necessarily. This step emphasizes the importance of nonverbal communication. It's about recognizing that how you deliver your message is just as important as the words themselves.
So it's about bringing the leader's script to life through your body language, your voice, your overall presence.
Precisely. Humphrey talks about this concept called visual blight, which is basically the overuse of visual aids that can distract from the speaker.
Oh, right. I've definitely been in those presentations where the slides are so busy and overwhelming that you completely tune out the speaker.
Happens all the time. Humphrey uses Lou Gerstner's observations about IBM as an example. Apparently, when Gerstner joined IBM, he was shocked by how over-the-top the visuals were. It was all about the slides, not the speaker.
So it's about making sure you're the focal point, not the PowerPoint.
Exactly. You are your own best visual. Stand tall, use confident gestures, make eye contact.
Speaking of eye contact, I've always wondered about that. Isn't it culturally dependent? Like, in some cultures, direct eye contact can be considered rude.
That's true, but what's interesting is that even in cultures where it's traditionally less emphasized, like in some Asian countries, business leaders are recognizing the power of eye contact.
Really? So even with cultural differences, there's an understanding that it conveys confidence, authenticity.
It seems so. It's about making eye contact that feels natural, genuine, whether you're reading from a script or speaking off the cuff.
What about voice? Any tips for developing a stronger, more commanding voice?
Well, it all starts with your breath. Humphrey talks about the importance of proper breathing techniques to support a strong and resonant voice.
It's interesting, isn't it? The word inspired comes from the Latin inspirare, which means to breathe in.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's like literally our voice is fueled by the breath of inspiration.
That's amazing. It makes perfect sense. So yeah, pay attention to your breath, practice deep breathing exercises, and also think about your pace, your modulation, vary your tone and volume to emphasize key points, keep people engaged.
Okay, so we've got think like a leader, expect yourself as a leader, use the language of leadership, and achieve a leader's presence. Sounds like a pretty comprehensive roadmap for transforming our communication, becoming more impactful leaders.
It really is. And the best part is, it's not about some innate talent or charisma. It's about making conscious choices in how we communicate, both verbally and non-verbally.
So anyone can learn to do this.
Absolutely. It's about practice, about being mindful of how we speak and present ourselves. And by focusing on our vision, crafting compelling messages, and projecting that leader's presence, we can elevate our everyday interactions into moments of true leadership.
So much to think about. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have
We've talked about the importance of mindset, structure, language, and presence.
all critical elements of effective leadership communication.
In our next segment, we'll delve deeper into some specific techniques and strategies for actually implementing these 4 steps.
We'll get into the nitty-gritty of how to put these ideas into practice.
Until then, we encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed today.
Yeah, think about how you can start incorporating these ideas into your own communication, whether it's a big presentation or a casual conversation.
Because remember, becoming a more impactful leader starts with the conscious choice to transform the way you speak.
Exactly. It's a journey, and every step we take towards better communication brings us closer to unlocking our full potential as leaders. Welcome back to our deep dive into Judith Humphrey's Speaking as a Leader. In this segment, we're going to shift gears a bit and explore some action into techniques, stuff you can actually use to implement those 4 steps we discussed in the last part.
Right, because it's one thing to understand the principles, but it's another to actually put them into practice.
Absolutely. So let's start with think like a leader. Remember, it's all about shifting your focus from simply conveying information to actually inspiring action. So instead of just drowning people in data, think about how you can present that information strategically to support your core message.
Okay, I get that in theory, but can you give me a more concrete example of how that might work?
Sure. Let's say you're proposing a new marketing campaign. Instead of presenting a ton of market research data, all those charts and graphs, focus on the key insights that actually support your strategy.
Ah, so it's more about storytelling with the data.
Exactly. Paint a picture of your target audience, highlight their needs, and then show how your campaign will meet those needs. That's how you make data meaningful and engaging.
Right, because data without a story is just noise.
Precisely. And remember, think like a leader is not just about presentations. It's also about that always-on mindset we talked about.
Right, like Tom Barinelli, who sees every interaction as a leadership opportunity.
Exactly. Every conversation, every encounter is a chance to connect with people, to inspire them, to lead.
Okay, so that's think like a leader. Now, how about script yourself as a leader? I'm still a bit fuzzy on how Humphrey's leader's script framework actually worked in practice.
Right. So the leader script is essentially a tool for structuring your thoughts, making sure your message is clear, impactful, it hits the mark. And it all starts with the grabber. Remember that?
Oh yeah, the thing that grabs the audience's attention right away, like David Galloway and his interesting opening about romance novels.
Exactly. Now, humor isn't always appropriate, obviously, but the point is to find something that's relevant to your topic, something that will hook your audience.
Okay, but what are some other good grabbers?
Well, you could start with a thought-provoking question, or maybe a startling statistic. A personal anecdote can also be really effective. It's really about tailoring it to your specific audience and the situation.
So once you got their attention, what's next?
Well, you need to transition smoothly to your subject and make sure you articulate a clear, concise message.
And that can be tough, can it? Staying focused, avoiding those rambling tangents.
It definitely takes practice. One helpful technique is to try distilling your entire message down to a single sentence.
A single sentence.
Yeah, think of it like an elevator pitch for your entire speech or presentation. If you can sum it up in one sentence, it forces you to prioritize your key points, eliminate anything unnecessary.
That's a great tip.
And then once you have that core message, you can structure the rest of your script to support and reinforce it. So it's not just about what you say, it's about how you organize it.
It's about guiding your audience towards that desired outcome.
Exactly. Now, moving on to the third step, use the language of leadership. This one's all about recognizing that the words we choose can make or break our message.
And the first rule of thumb is to ditch the jargon, right?
Absolutely. Clarity is paramount. Replace complex terms with simple, straightforward language that everyone can understand. Think of it this way. If you can't explain your idea to your grandmother, you probably haven't simplified it enough.
I love that analogy.
And along with clarity, authenticity is key. Speak in a genuine conversational term. Use words like I, you, we to personalize your message.
Like that Missouri farmer who found political success by simplifying his language, right?
Precisely. It shows that connecting with people on a human level transcends fancy language.
It's about being real, being relatable. Okay, last but not least, achieve a leader's presence. We talked about how important nonverbal communication is, but how do we actually make that happen?
Right, so remember visual blight, that whole thing about excessive visual aids distracting from the speaker?
Oh yeah, like Gerstner's observations about IBM. Too much focus on the slides, not enough on the person.
Exactly. So the first step is to minimize those distractions. You are your own best visual. Stand tall, use confident gestures, make eye contact.
I've always struggled with eye contact. Any tips for making it feel less awkward?
Well, instead of staring intensely at one person, try scanning the room. Make brief eye contact with different people throughout your presentation or conversation. It creates that sense of inclusivity without feeling too intense.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about our voices? How do we develop a voice that projects authority and confidence?
Well, it all starts with your breaths. Humphrey really emphasizes the importance of breath work, practicing deep breathing techniques. It helps you project a strong, resonant voice.
It's funny how we keep coming back to breath, isn't it?
It is, like you said earlier, even the word inspire comes from inspire, to breathe in. It's like the very foundation of communication.
So pay attention to your breath. Practice those breathing exercises. What else?
Think about your pace and modulation. Vary your tone and volume to emphasize key points, keep people engaged. Don't be afraid to pause for effect.
Right, because a monotone voice can be really boring.
Absolutely, but ultimately, authenticity is key. Don't try to force a persona that doesn't feel natural.
So find your own authentic leader's voice.
Exactly, because people can spot a fake from a mile away.
So we've covered a lot of practical techniques for those 4 steps. Think like a leader, script yourself as a leader, use the language of leadership, and achieve a leader's presence.
A lot to process.
It is. But it's all about making those conscious choices in how we communicate, both verbally and nonverbally.
And remember, these techniques can be applied to any communication scenario, whether it's a formal presentation, a team meeting, or even just a casual conversation.
It's empowering, isn't it, to realize that we can all develop these skills.
It is. It's about recognizing that effective leadership communication is a learned skill, not something you're born with.
Well, in our final segment, we're going to do something a bit different. We're going to distill all of the key takeaways from Humphrey's book into a concise 10-point summary.
So a sort of cheat sheet for our listeners to take with them.
Exactly. A handy reference guide they can use to enhance their own communication.
Great idea. Looking forward to it.
Me too. But until then, we encourage you to keep practicing these techniques. Observe how they impact your interactions, how they help you become a more impactful leader.
Because remember, becoming a better leader starts with the choice to communicate more effectively.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on this incredible journey with Judith Humphrey, speaking as a leader, really digging into how to transform the way we communicate to become those inspiring leaders we all have the potential to be.
Absolutely. It's been a great discussion so far.
It has. We've explored those 4 crucial steps of Humphrey's leadership model. Think like a leader, script yourself as a leader, use the language of leadership, and achieve a leader's presence.
4 powerful pillars for effective leadership communication.
Definitely. And we've talked about some practical techniques, real-world strategies for putting those steps into action.
So we've given our listeners a solid foundation, the tools to start making some real changes.
Exactly. But now in this final segment, we want to do something a little different. We want to crystallize all of this, all of Humphrey's wisdom, into a concise 10-point summary.
Oh, I like that. A sort of cheat sheet for our listeners.
Exactly. 10 key takeaways, actionable points they can reference and apply to their own communication.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay, so point number 1, move beyond information dumps.
Right. Instead of just throwing data at people, think about crafting a compelling story, something that resonates, something that inspires them to take action.
Point number 2, structure your thoughts.
Using Humphrey's leader script framework, of course, it's all about clarity, making sure your message is organized and hits the mark every time.
Point number 3, banish jargon.
Oh, absolutely. Embrace that clear conversational language. No more buzzwords, no more alphabet soup, just real, authentic communication that everyone can understand.
Point number 4, be personal.
Connect with your audience on a human level. Use words like I, you, we. Create that sense of shared purpose.
Point number 5, you are your own best visual.
Minimize those external distractions. Stand tall, be present, own the room. Your presence, your energy, that's what truly captivates people.
Point number 6, master the art of eye contact.
It's more than just looking at people. It's about connecting with them, building rapport, creating that sense of trust and authenticity.
Point number 7, find your leader's voice.
Project confidence, authority through a strong, resonant voice. Practice those breathing techniques. Vary your pace and tone. Make your voice a powerful instrument of leadership.
Point number 8, Suit the action to the word.
Nonverbal communication is just as important as verbal communication. Use gestures, facial expressions to amplify your message.
Point number 9. Take the numb out of numbers.
Data is important, but it needs to be presented in a way that's engaging and meaningful. Use visuals, tell stories, don't let the numbers just sit there on the page.
And finally, point number 10. Infuse your message with sincerity.
People can tell when you're not being genuine, so speak from the heart. Let your passion, your conviction shine through.
There we have it, folks. 10 powerful takeaways from Judith Humphreys, speaking as a leader.
A roadmap for becoming more impactful, more influential, more inspiring leaders.
We hope this deep dive has been insightful and valuable for you.
We hope it's giving you some concrete tools, some new ways of thinking about communication.
Remember, leadership isn't about titles or positions. It's about action, about influence, about inspiring others to achieve great things. And it all starts with the way we communicate.
It's a journey, and it's one we can all take together.
So keep diving deep, keep practicing, keep leading boldly. And until next time, may your words inspire and your actions transform the world around you.